Should you train to failure? The answer is yes and no. When I first started lifting, it took me a good 2 years until I heard about not training to failure all the time. Before that, I was going balls out every single session all the time, and I always needed a spotter for squat and bench. And so then I realized that a lot of people weren't even training to failure and they were making better progress than me. After that, I started training a few reps shy of failure, and today I'm going to tell you why you should and shouldn't train to failure. So first of all, when it comes to training to failure, the thing is it generates more fatigue than not training to failure, but it doesn't generate that much more stimulus. If you leave a few reps in the tank, you will be able to do more volume, and that will result in more stimulus. Training to failure is pretty fatiguing, and the more experienced lifter you are, the more you need to think about fatigue management. The second problem with going to failure is form breakdown. Now, obviously everybody knows that you should live with good form in order to get the most amount of stimulus from the exercises you're doing, and also to avoid injuries. However, when you train to failure, you might do a bit of cheating reps as well in the end, and that will lead to injury very easily. I think this whole form breakdown thing is a bit more important when it comes to beginners, because they want to learn good form and they don't know good form yet. It isn't engraved in their minds, and so they need to actively think about lifting with good form. And that's why when they're pushing it really hard, the form usually sucks. It's a lot more stress, and injury risk becomes higher. And also, especially on some very big compound lifts, it becomes nearly impossible to train to failure. Especially when it comes to shit like deadlifts and squats. Good luck going to failure in those. Like, bro, just start deadlifting to failure every single week. Obviously don't do this, but if you start doing this, on the 4th week, you're going to be dead. Just straight out dead. And the thing is, on lifts like these, it's pretty dangerous to go to failure. Usually on stuff like lateral raises and small isolations, it's not that big of a problem, but when it comes to deadlifts or squats, and especially shit that falls on you, so squats and bench press, if you don't have a spotter, it's an even worse idea. There's also CNS fatigue, which basically just means central nervous system fatigue, and it builds up over time, especially if you're not deloading every few weeks, and over time this will lead to decreased performance. It's also very mentally fatiguing, so if you're like going in the gym every single week and like, yeah, I need to squat to failure again, like, you're going to be damned mentally. Even if I have squats programmed at like RPE 7, which is 3 reps left in the tank, I'm like, fuck, I need to do squats again. So it's pretty tough on your mental as well. Now, does this mean that you should stop training to failure altogether forever? Obviously no. And so here's why you should train to failure. The thing is, when you're using reps in reserve with your training, you can't actually be sure whether you're training 3 reps shy of failure or maybe even 4. Some people are able to feel this very well, but some people aren't. And usually the more experienced you are when it comes to lifting, the better you're going to be at determining RPE. However, every lifter should go to failure every once in a while, in my opinion, to assess where they are in the gym. If they're actually training RPE 7 and RPE 8, or if they're just leaving like 10 reps in the tank. Usually you should do this before a deload. Now, also training to failure can be a good tool in your toolbox when it comes to breaking through plateaus, especially for advanced folk, and some people even go beyond failure with certain intensity techniques. So, what's the solution even? How should you do things? The approach that can work for most people is starting at RPE 7 or RPE 6, and if you don't know what RPE is, it is a measure of how hard the set was. So for an example, if I did a set of 8 on the bench, and I could have done 2 more, that's RPE 8. If I could have done 1 more, that's RPE 9. And if 8 reps was my max with the given weight, and if I try a 9th rep, I will fail, that's basically RPE 10. Usually doing sets that are lower than RPE 6 isn't very helpful when it comes to stimulating muscle growth. So a good approach is starting at RPE 7 and maybe RPE 6 on exercises like squat and bench, where the bar can fall on you and it's kind of dangerous. After that, you will add reps or weight every single week. Eventually, as you add sets as well, you will be really fatigued after a couple of weeks. This means that it's time for deload, baby. But the last week before your deload, what you can do is take the first set of every single exercise you're doing to failure. Obviously, now with deadlifts and squats and with bench, you can do this, but only if you have a spotter. By that time, most of your sets will be very close to or at failure anyways. The reason I say go to failure only on the first set of every exercise, because you don't want to tire yourself out that much. This is because if I have like 5 exercises the last week before I deload, 4 sets each, that means that if I do every single set to failure on the 5th exercise, I'm going to be just crawling. I'm going to just try to even survive. And that means that if I take the first set of my 5th exercise to failure, it won't really mean much, because I could have done more if I wouldn't have blasted myself with the first 4 exercises. So this way you will know where you're at in your training, and if you're not actually training at RP 7, 8, 9, or if you start at like RP 9 maybe and you were training already on the first week too close to failure. And so after doing this, you will be able to adjust your program based on this. You don't need to do this before every deload. If you're better at RP estimation, you can do this just every few months. All of this is very important information, but the thing is, it will not get you a 6-pack. For that, you'll need to lose weight, and if you want to know how to do that in an intelligent manner, click here.